What's up, y'all? It's your host, Sid, and welcome back to another episode of CoolHER Talk. I'm so excited that you're here today, joining me and so many dope women as we transparently inspire and empower through conversations about womanhood, careers, relationships, and all of life's experiences. Joining me at the CoolHER today is my longtime friend and boss woman, Isabella Naranjo. She's an account director, an amazing golfer, and loves food and traveling just as much as I do. Isabella, I'm so happy to have you here today. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sid. As she said, I'm Isabella. I kind of grew up in Venezuela and in Dallas, and so I moved to the United States when I was about 10 years old, and I think that significantly impacted a lot of my life and my trajectory. And then for the last 8 years, I've lived in California. I live in Los Angeles, and that's also significantly affected the trajectory of my life. I moved out here for a job opportunity to a city I definitely did not want to live in. And 8 years later, I'm still here. So doing something right. And now I work on Apple. I do really cool marketing stuff. I did not think that I would be here at the time that I am. So it's definitely a surprise and trajectory. You can plan as much as you can and you end up where you end up. And yeah, right now I think in my early 30s, I'm really trying to shift focus from how can I be ultimate boss woman to how can I be well-rounded human. So that's kind of the focus right now on getting more hobbies, playing more golf, cooking more, and trying to check off more countries off the list.
Yes, I love that. So let's start with career. That's how you and I met. So Isabella and I actually worked together at my very first job, the job that moved me to Dallas. And here I am, right? Like a state that I had never been. And obviously, like Isabella said, like where she grew up. So let's talk marketing. Like, how did you get into marketing? Was it something that like a career you always saw growing up, or like what drew you to it?
Yeah, I wanted to do something super creative. I wanted to be in movies. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to do something with illustration. I'm a shit artist myself, but I was like, I can always be in that world. My parents, kind of fresh to this country, were like, you have to do things that make money. You have to do finance. You have to do this. And I can't calculate tip to this day without a pen and paper and a lot of time. So that I've kind of found the intersection of making my parents happy and doing something that was related to creative. And I went into college basically being like, I will try to do both. I will have it all. And obviously that's kind of a silly notion because I did have to sacrifice some of my dream in order to do that. And now's the time where now that I've kind of made it, settled into the career that I have, it's time to self-evaluate and see, kind of pivot how I can still keep doing the job, but really now honing in on my dreams. I have made my parents happy. What's left for me? But really, I studied advertising in college. It was my degree and minor in business. And then I went straight into advertising in Dallas, close to my parents. And about 2 years in, when we were working together, I think the two of us just kind of got that itch, and one after the other, we were just like, we got to go be free. And we flew the nest.
Yep. So that's something you said is super interesting. I think not even something that I had to personally consider when I went into school or, got out of my parents' house to go to college. But you said that you had to merge, the dreams of what you wanted to do and also making your parents happy. So thinking about, your parents coming here from Venezuela, you growing up, there and here in Texas, how did that, I guess, impact, your ultimate trajectory? Or what do you feel like are some things for those who do migrate to the States or immigrate from one country to another, it has that impact on, ultimately what you become to be?
Yeah, I think it's I'm still realizing the impact of kind
Mm.
of starting anew later in life in a new country. Like my parents didn't have credit, like didn't have a life, didn't have generational wealth here, didn't have a 401k. Like you're starting that in your 40s, and so it does feel like there's mounting pressure that you just kind of naturally flows down into your kids in I would say in my case a healthy way, where like my parents were pushing us, not like saying this is the only option.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm realizing now really like the absolute blessing that it was, because that pressure is kind of what, like, I don't feel like an immigrant. I don't have an accent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, I have good credit and long credit relative to a lot of people. And all of those things kind of ladder up. Like they seem silly. It's like credit. It's like, well, but
Yeah.
they're all the things that give you opportunity to do bigger things. And so I always felt a duty of like, in some way, I have to give back to my parents for what
Mm-hmm.
they've done.
Mm-hmm. And then do you feel like, as you've grown up and become the word that we all dislike sometimes, become an adult, do you feel like your parents have learned from the opportunities that you've taken, whether it was going to UT or leaving the nest and like leaving Texas in general? Like, do you feel like your parents have had some, kind of learning just from you as their kid?
100%. And I think the ultimate thing it comes down to is like the idea of me being a modern woman compared to what being a
Mm-hmm.
woman, the expectation of was, like, at least when my mom was coming up. But there'll be like, when I was in my 20s, I was like, I'm no longer going to come home and kind of like be the model daughter. Sometimes they joke that like I went to school at UT in Austin, and they sometimes joke that like going to UT ruined my manners. And I'm like, yeah, I slurped my food sometimes. But what it really taught me was that it kind of broke me out of the mold of like model daughter into, you have to see me as I am and accept me as I am. I think some of that was growing pains for my parents, but I think we've come over the hump of like, well, but now they see me as brave and daring and like in little things, like moving to a state across the country by myself with no friends in that state. Like that's something my mom would never have done, that
Yep.
she's very proud of me for now.
Yep. I can totally relate to that because like, and I would say the same thing, like with my mom, it's so many things that me and my sister or brother have done that they wouldn't have even, thought was okay. And like you mentioned, the model woman or the model daughter, like our parents were raised to be exactly that. Like, my mom came up when they always wanted their hair straightened, because they were told like, oh, have your hair straightened. You can't wear, an afro. You can't wear this because, it's not accepting of white culture. And here we are, generation of millennials. We're like, I'm going to wear my locks. I'm going to dye my hair. I can dye my hair and wear my locks and be a CEO. Like we're just kind of like defying all, walls of you must be this. And that's literally how they were raised and they thought it was okay. So I've slowly over the years, especially all of us moved and left. Jack lived in Indonesia for almost 2 years. He just came back. Crystalline left immediately, went to college in North Carolina. I went to Texas, and we've easily saw like our parents learn from the opportunities that we took. And I think it's like such a beautiful thing to like in some ways still see your parents grow, because of choices that you decide to make. And like you said, though, we were able to make those choices because of the foundation they, set for us or the things that they gave to us to allow us to be successful. So that is a really beautiful space. So thinking about, how many years did you grow up in Venezuela before y'all moved?
I was 10.
You were 10.
So yeah.
So there, and I would say, considering family there and, here in Texas, like, growing up, who inspired you or who had like big impacts on Isabella?
I always had this memory of me sitting in like this outdoor patio area on like my dad's lap, my uncle's lap, and it just being like the men who were talking business, who were smoking cigars, and I was always like, this is the mental space I need to be in, because this is where success is. And like growing up, that was always like, it's the men. They'll get me to where I want to be. And in my, I mean, there's a turnaround coming, but in my like mid 20s, I think I had a realization of like, one, all my friends are dudes, didn't love that. And the second was like, I need more like meaningful female relationships. And I started to do a lot of retrospective. And looking back, it was like, while the men were sitting on that patio, the women were like working, like they were talking, they were doing. And the retrospective in my mind is like, my mom are like the women in my life, my aunts and my godmother. My godmother was always someone who in my head was like, oh, she's a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. She's like, but she's great. And I'm like, she like low key had like a new business every year. And she like, she may not have like, success doesn't mean high income. These women like were low key influencing me to be more ambitious, to work harder. Like they were the ones who were like the lead by example. And then the men were like the poster children of like, well, this was my net worth. And I mean, that's a huge generalization. There's some amazing men in my life. But as a general thing, it's like, as I was growing up, I was like, oh, the really influential people in my life were the strong women. And kind of, I carry that now.
Yeah, it's so wild, like having that retrospective look of what you thought, you know, whether it was a family member or you know, someone else like in your kind of childhood, like who you thought and what you thought they were, or their job or anything, and then becoming your own adult self and realizing like, like they actually were like bad to the bone. I know one thing that I talked about on another episode is you know, just thinking about the barber that my dad and my brother went to, or the fish market or the seafood market we would go to, or the hairstylist that we like. Those were all entrepreneurs. Like here I am, like, you know, late 20s, early 30s. I'm like, I never imagined, you know, owning a business, or I never really saw entrepreneurship growing up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I saw so many entrepreneurs, like growing up in Savannah, Georgia, like that is a city of, you know, hustle and bustle, small business, you know, ownership. And I never realized how much we do have exposure to those things, but it just was not embraced. It was go to school, get a job, and be a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, you know, like whatever the things were. And I just think we missed out on the opportunity to embrace, you know, either more of our creative side or more of a self-employed route. You know, we just thought college and some job working for someone was the goal and was the only option. So I love now that we get to see that, you know, it's not just that. So I feel like you have one of those jobs as an account director where your family and your friends are just like, I don't know what she does. You know, like I know she does this one thing, but I don't know. So for those listening, what's something about your role that people may not know, or what's something about account directing that people just, you know, that they may think it is? Like, what's a myth?
I mean, I think people are like, a lot of people are like, oh, so you're just in charge. I'm like, kind of, but essentially I'm like if you think of a really like PowerPoint web chart where it's just like, there's one in the middle and then all the bubbles come out of it. You have all the bubbles of like creative strategy, marketing, science, the clients, like all of the things that kind of make up what goes into advertising and marketing. And I'm one of the people that sits in the middle where I touch every piece of the business, and I just I'm like air traffic control of like, I'm just trying to make sure to usher in the best creative I can, but I'm like liable for the work. So like while I'm not putting together the strategy and I'm not in Photoshop making things or writing, it comes by my desk, and I'm responsible for making sure like this is ready for clients, this is ready for the world, this is cleared by legal, this is kind of I guess the buck stops with me, but I'm just kind of like in service of good creative, happy clients. I don't know, I guess good budgets sometimes.
Especially good budgets.
But that's like trying to buffer those budgets a little.
I think that's something though that I've always admired. Like when I got my first advertising job, like something that I've always admired about the account director role is like, and I would say more so for people that work within the industry, it's usually not the most praised role. You know, everybody loves the creative team that puts together the amazing commercials, or now the shiny toy of the social and digital and the AI teams that, you know, innovate, you know, new things. But like Isabella said, the account director role is literally like the underrated MVP. Because not only, and a great account director, which I've had the, you know, pleasure of working with one, is that you not only have to kind of like manage the communications and be that liaison between the client and the team, but great account directors, they know everyone's job to an extent, you know, and whether you're on the creative team, social team, brand planning, insights, whatever, like the benefit of your account director really knowing like what you do and how you do it, what it takes, and you kind of leaving that door open to make sure that, you know, information is shared and that understanding is there. It makes or break to me like the entire account. It makes or break, you know, the work and the entire team, because the more Isabella knows exactly like what it takes to do my job, the better she is on letting the client know like, yeah, no, we cannot turn that around in 24 hours because this platform is going to hiccup 29 times before we even, you know, put the execution out or whatever. So how have you, I guess, kind of fostered some of those relationships? You've worked, you know, at a number of agencies. You've worked at a number of amazing brands throughout your career. So like, how do you kind of like foster those relationships between your role on the team and all the other roles that you have to like manage at the same time?
Yeah, I think the one common misconception of my job is that I'm doing what the clients want. And I actually like the clients are super important. Don't get me wrong. But I think the first place to start is with like who the team is. It's like what the vibe is inside the agency, and then who's assigned to like whatever. If you have a dedicated team for whatever you do, or if you have a new team every time, like really diving into what is going to be the dynamic when we brief in this new thing. Because that's it, basically it's like good work and good people can do anything. Like, sure, a good brief is great, but if you kind of can get in there and it's like, I have the right strategist, I have the right creative director, their teams are great. The producer is a go-getter who can, you know, make it all happen. And then like the media team is game and they're collaborative and they're open dialogue. Like it all just kind of becomes easy. So if internally I can kind of figure out kind of how everyone's meshing and what the output's going to be, I can tell pretty easily, like clients will be happy. Yep. Like I don't have to do a lot. It's more of like me getting out of the way of the flow of that greatness to and like letting the clients see that. And I think the hard part is like when there's either problem people or there's like I'll sit in an internal where maybe like, ooh, we're a little off brief, guys. It's figuring out how to diplomatically course correct without killing an idea or degrading someone's thinking. It's kind of basically just getting back to that path of greatness. And I mean, part of my job is I'm also the person that delivers the bad news. So it's like I'm first line of defense. It's like we're off schedule, we're off budget. Like sometimes I went to a client once and literally was like, I know we're supposed to go to the director tomorrow to present and I'm going to make you look good, but we're nowhere near ready and we have to start over and I need 3 more weeks. And that never goes over well. There was a call to my boss about that. But eventually it was like, well, I'd rather you just told me, then whatever.
Exactly.
And then on the flip side, I'm the first one that hears praise. So what you were saying is about sometimes it's an underappreciated. It's like, me personally, I don't really worry too much about it. I don't feel like I need anything more because I'm the first one to hear the team did a great job. This was great. The CMO loved it. We got a con line for this. So I'm always like, I didn't do it, but I made it. I helped make it happen.
Yep.
And so that. Like the self-praise and the confidence, I think, is really important for a decent account director to have.
I love that so much. So, for those listening, if you've been around the last 2 seasons, you know that we've always kicked off CoolHER Talk sessions with a this or that icebreaker, but new season and new vibes. So this year we are introducing pour sessions. And this is where we just take a break in the conversation and y'all get to know me and my guests a little bit more. So I have 2 questions for Isabella today. The first one is, do you prefer in-store shopping or online shopping?
I'm one of those elder millennials no, I'm actually, I think, a younger millennial. But I think mostly online shopping. You might hear some sirens right now. But mostly online shopping. But if you ask me if it's a dress, if it's leggings, like there's now a little category of still in-store only, where it's like, if you're asking me to get like an outfit for a wedding, I'm like, I have to go to a mall. Yeah. Like I haven't grown out of the, like, I know I can order 8 things, have them delivered, try them on, go return.
Just in a bag. Yeah.
But in a day. Yeah. But no. So mostly I do a lot of online shopping, but depends on what it is.
I agree. I am definitely an online shopper. I would say when it comes to like returns, if the store like exists near me, then I definitely still like to just now go into the store and return in case I might find something else versus like shipping it back. But I have to agree, like I'm with you, like every now and then I don't mind a little mall trip, like just that feeling of like, and I think it, it just taps into probably like childhood nostalgia. Like the mall was like a place my family frequented. Whether it was that's what we went to, like JC Penney's or something, like, or Olin Mills to take like family photos, or like we were meeting a friend in high school who had a job in the mall. Like, and even the other day, like I was like riding around doing errands and I was like, I haven't been in the mall lately. I'm thinking about like those mall walker ladies. I was like, I can be her. Like when I grow up, like walk out with bags on my arms. But yeah, I don't mind the mall. And I think it's just because like I love shopping. But usually my first stop is online. Just, it works for my schedule, works for motherhood. Like you said, I am the person that's going to buy the things in 3 sizes and just see what sticks and send it back. But yeah, online with a little bit of in-store sprinkled in. My second question is, if you could build your own social platform, what would it be like?
I think it would probably be like an evolution of Pinterest in a way, of like being able, because it like a vision board version of Pinterest, where I kind of like the idea of a platform like that having like you can make your own kind of vision board, where it's like, instead of having 1,000 pins of like what I want my kitchen to look like, I'd be able to just like have a little bit more creative freedom, and then just be able to kind of export. And then it would give me like a list of where I can buy the stuff, or more resources for where I can execute that vision. Like, I think for me, the social media, the kind of hardest part of it is that social part, where I'm actually at this point in my adulting looking for tools. More than socialization.
Yeah. I'm good with talking.
And yeah, like I want more functionality in my social media. Like even in Instagram, I have 1,000 reels saved of like how to make homemade ramen.
Categorized folders, like
categorize folders, but I want like I want one step further. It feels like I'm misusing the tool a little bit, where I'm like permanent lurker and using it for my own functionality. So that would be my social media. And then if people want to see my vision boards, that's fine. And you know, I always want my family to have some visibility because it can be exhausting to reach out to people, but
yeah,
more function.
I like that though. I like a evolution of a Pinterest, because think about it, like with this whole mood board track. One thing that I love that you said, because I was going to say, I don't know the grand scheme of what my social platform would be if I created, but I know it would be photo based. And you know, if there's recipe videos and stuff like that, cool, but it'll be photo based. And I like this idea of mood board, because think if it is like a picture of you and Max or a picture of me, Tone, and Bray, like that can go on the mood board too. And then I can, you know, drag it down when that's not relevant anymore. Put up my pasta I made last night, drag that around. Like I like this idea of some fluid space, where it's not like grid feed, like it's structured on its own, like where you just kind of create the structure of it. And it's like an open, you remember that tool back in the day called Prezi? Like it's almost like a Prezi or like a
back in the day.
I feel like that was
I think Canva became like the new Prezi.
The new Prezi.
Yeah, Prezi, exactly. Like that. Right. Figma is another tool where it's like collaborative tools that came around during COVID. Yeah. I'm like, why don't we just
a Figma board? Like you have your Figma, I got mine, and boom, see my board. Like that, like we're not worried about captions, we're not worried about timing. Like it's just a mood board. That's it. I love it. It's probably out there. I have to search. It's probably an app already out there. We just don't know. But no, I love that. So transitioning back into our questions, and speaking of social media in your industry or your space, and I mean, think about like from the day you started your career to now, how has social media had an impact on your field, or maybe even now AI a little bit? Like how has any of those kind of like digital communication spaces like had an impact on your field?
Yeah. I mean, the first way it had an impact, I think, is that when we graduated, we were like immediate experts. You know, like we'd walk into a room and be like, oh, you know, like on Facebook, you know, that's
literally how I landed on the Dr. Pepper social account. They was like, oh, you just graduated?
Like I know the caption count limit, character count limit. It's like, oh my gosh, she's an expert. I'm like, all right, I'll take that. Let's go. I would like a title for that. It's exactly like that how you came into it. I took like one digital class in college about like that taught me the basics of HTML and CSS in relation to like how you can make a landing page. And I'm like, all right. I was like, I didn't even realize how many doors that would open just because I'm coming into an industry where that was like up and coming.
Yep.
And then I was like, I could figure that out, no problem. And they were like, okay, great. This is scary. So go do that. And that evolved. That's how you and I met. So I'd say social media's done me pretty well. I think now I have been pretty focused on performance marketing the last few years, which is essentially like you have your purchase funnel, someone's aware of something, then they consider the product. And then when you get to the bottom, you're trying to get them to like, we already know that you're aware of it. We already know that you want it. So it's basically just the bottom of the funnel of kind of what else do you need to kind of make that purchase. That's what performance marketing is in simplest terms. And social media has totally transformed performance marketing. It used to be serving you a million different banners, iterative, to see like how, you know, which one are you going to click on your desktop. TikTok is now our best performing performance tool. Like, because TikTok now has ad tools that you can put inside of the ad, like the display card that pops up. That's a performance marketing tool. They now have specific offerings for that type of conversion, and the social media platforms are the first to apply changes whenever we partner with them. They're the first to be like, we'll put your thing in beta just for Apple. I know that there's like obviously they would want to do that for us, but
Yeah.
there's but they do it for whoever thinks that is going to make their platform better, and they're fast. Like there's nothing more that we can ask than, hey, can we try this for a quarter? If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. And they're
Right.
game. And you can't go to a lot of these other ways that, like, you can't do that in out of home. You can't do that in TV. You can't do that as quickly, even with digital video.
Right.
So it's social media is where everything is happening. And with AI, I think we've been particularly slow compared to the other tech companies. We're taking the approach of like, let's figure out what it is first and how to use it, and then we'll implement it. It also has a lot of concerns with data privacy and with copywriting and like who owns the text that's written. If it comes from AI, it's not owned by Apple. So there's a lot of discussion around that, but AI hasn't touched that directly into our social media process, but we're this far. Like, it's about to.
Yep. You can feel like the edge of the seat, the kind of rumble, coming like of that in infiltrating so many different spaces, right? Like I was telling a friend not too long ago, like we use a software called Honeybook for our kind of like consultation bookings, new client lead information, intake, type stuff. And we got a new client intake form the other day, and before like anybody on the team could go and like read through the intake form, figure out like what our response is going to be, whatever, like the automation going out, Honeybook sends a whole thing like based on what the lead put in their intake form, a response. And was like, hey, this is a response that we'll send to XYZ. Do you want us to make it longer or shorter? Do you want us to not mention things that are listed in question 5? Like literally had already, generated like this AI response. And it's like, wow, a lot of times I see, a lot of people are, scared or nervous and just like, I don't know, like about this AI thing, just like anything, we were scared of the internet. We were scared of phones. We were scared of all this. Like, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you start to really test out a lot of things that make your life easier. Only, so many people have, when you're starting out in a small business, so many, the capital to scale, to grow a team. But when you don't, for entrepreneurs that either are hesitant to scale or you just don't have the capital or the resources to do so, man, like look into these AI tools, like, and it ultimately, even if you don't have one that is, directly integral and implemented into your like day-to-day operations, just the idea of knowing what's out there already push you ahead of the curve than waiting until like everyone's fully using AI in some sense and you're just like, oh, I never checked it out.
And a lot of them are free right now.
Yeah,
they're just free. Ramping up. Like
they're just trying to get you to test it out. Like, and I think so. It's interesting to hear from, just from more of a corporate perspective from you on like, what some of that has looked like. So, I think this next question, you can think of it from a couple of different roles or identities of Isabella. But the question is, what does a tough day in your world look like? Whether that is as a minority woman in a male dominated industry, as an account director in general, as just a millennial living in LA, like what does a tough day in your world look like?
I was trying to think about kind of like the progression of what my mindset was when I thought of like what it took to get here, and kind of adulting means this. And I think that this is a good one for this question, that a bad day is when I'm not the better version of myself. 'Cause at this point, it's like, if I have a bad day at work, it's like, there's nothing really happening at work anymore that is like, unless I'm getting fired or unless there's like a really big thing that's going to ruin everyone's day. It's just kind of like however I respond is however my day is. So if something comes across my desk, it's like campaign we just finished that everyone loves just got canceled. That's happened before. tragedy, but it's like, you know, I don't need to carry that forever. I just kind of need to like figure out what to do about it. The days where I have bad days is like, do I wake up with a migraine? Because I'm susceptible to them. Did I not sleep well? Am I not hydrated? Do I have like time to eat lunch? Like, am I going to work out today? Are Max and I going to have dinner? Is it date night? Like, did I call my mom? Honestly,
look, that's a solid
it's
list.
simplifying. It's simplifying. It used to be like, did I get praise today? And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I can do that. I can praise myself. I can validate myself. Did I drink water? Like, a bad day's when I go to bed and I'm like, I don't feel like the best version of myself. So let's just, but then again, it's, you know, like, let's try again tomorrow.
Oh, I like
that. Day is temporary.
Look at you, mic dropping. So I guess in the sense, if we flip that, what does your ultimate self look like? So you've been in your career for what, 12 years? 11, 12 years?
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, you've been in LA. I can't even believe you've been in LA that long. That's insane.
I can't either.
Like, you've been in LA for almost a decade.
All right, you don't have to say it like that.
It's just wild. Like, how has it been that long? So, like, what does your ultimate self look like? What Isabella is living her best life. Her days are exactly how she loves them. Like, and I had someone on so far that has said, that their ultimate self was more so a feeling. They can't pinpoint where they are in life, what's in their bank. It's just a feeling, and that has lived rent free for me. But what does Isabella's ultimate self look like?
Basic needs covered. Like, the ultimate self is living at the highest part of the hierarchy of needs. Of like, are the biggest things that I'm working on, is it self-fulfillment? It's, you know, what's going to make me happier tomorrow? Like, family planning with Max, not soon, one day. Like, it's making sure my parents are well. Like, I know it sounds like making more money. That's on the list. Feeling better about my future freedom. I think like that's kind of you've had that growth and that progression with launching your company of like getting away from, I work for this company and my best self depends on who they are. You have kind of been able to get the freedom to get away from that a little bit and set yourself up, you and Tone, your family, your whole family. Like, you rise, you all rise. Like, that's absolutely manifested. And that's a little bit of what I'm starting to think about now of like, how do I raise the betterment of everyone in my life through the things that I do? And I think that's the best version of myself when I get to really like, that's what I'm working on today. And everything else is good and nothing else has caused me stress. And I worked out, because that's really the hardest part of my life is working out.
And you drunk your water, girl. I just got chills before we talked about working out and drinking water. But I just got chills. Like how many times do, you know, we all have those friends or, you know, somebody in our life, coworkers, whoever, that they don't have as close of a family relationship, you know, like you and I have. And it gave me chills to think that, like, to get to a point where one day the thing that is driving me most or that I love most, or like, look, I've made it, is all wrapped in the people who supported us, the people who raised us, the people who, you know, allowed us to have the opportunities, helped us get to the opportunities that we've gotten, that is ultimate. Like, cause it's just like, at the end of the day, it's like you said, like, when you kind of getting into your career, like where we are, like a decade of doing, you know, over a decade of doing, it's not really many things like in the job, in the workforce that can like, oh, this just turned my whole day upside down. Like, you've seen it, been there, done there, got a t-shirt, right? Like, it's just not that many things anymore. But to get to a point where, hey, the thing that I woke up today. I drank my water, I worked out, and the rest of my day, I was able to focus. Right, get that sip, get that sip. Like the rest of my day, I was able to focus on uplifting others around me and whatever I do, and it was fulfilling. Like I feel that, like that's an energy, it's a vibe. Like I would say that is definitely a testament to part of my ultimate self and where I love to be. So ending with the last question, and obviously my favorite, if you could leave advice for a woman at the cooler, looking to be in your shoes or your space, what advice would you leave them?
I would say let the hard stuff fuel you. I think like everything we've been talking about today has been kind of aspirational, beautiful, and it's true. It's all true, but it kind of sits on a foundation of the reason we're here is because we dealt with some shit, and like everything is just a little harder than it needs to be. And I'm always a little too tired to deal with the world. And that's getting worse as I get older. Like not a lot of stuff is much better, but I'm not getting less tired by the minute. So the things that kind of give me, like the things we're talking about is what fuels the hustle and what fuels, like, I will continue to get up because now I have a purpose and now I have kind of a North Star, and look how far I've come, and therefore there's really nothing I can't do. I have that kind of clear vision in my life. And I think the advice I'd give to anyone is like, the hard parts help you get to that space where you can look back and say, look how far I've come. And then that's your evidence. Say like, well, I've done that, and in retrospect, it didn't ruin me or kill me. So may as well keep going. And then it kind of builds and grows. And then you're like, I'm the CEO of my company. It's like, I'm doing marketing for Apple. I'm not changing the world here, but it's like a nice star I can claim, I guess. but it's just kind of like use the hard parts that come in your life, and there's no avoiding them, of just kind of like changing the story of what it means a little bit, of like, oh, I'm coming up against something hard. Let's see how I navigate this, because I know there will be another side. Like I'll come out the other side, and then it will just become a lesson, and I will know what to do moving forward.
I love that. Like using the hard parts as fuel. Like, you know, and you mentioned, you're just like, you know, look, like our jobs aren't changing the world. And that's the thing. Like as marketers, I feel like sometimes, or maybe in our career, a lot of times we have felt that way, but this right here, this conversation, like, and us being those women that, you know, will unabashedly give advice, or, you know, love to mentor somebody. Like those are the parts of what we do that change the world, right? Like my day to day typing out copy and approving visuals, like might not be changing the world, but like us connecting and, you know, just letting other women see, you know, there's another girl right now who's Venezuelan in America and trying to figure out her path. And, you know, and she's you. And we get to now kind of be those examples. Like you talked early on about, you know, that idea of this model woman or model daughter. And now that we are kind of like breaking down those barriers and those status quo, like we get to change the world through being who we are. Like, and that was just not a space that, you know, maybe we didn't even get to grow up seeing from the women in our lives. So thank you so much for that advice. Thank you so much, obviously, for sharing your story and just joining me around the cooler. And I don't know, maybe your LinkedIn. I don't know. We talked about how you just you're a lurker, but is there any way if somebody was interested in getting in touch with you, any channel you wanted to share?
Yeah, my LinkedIn is perfect. I do have an Instagram, but I keep it close to chest just so my aunts can know that I'm doing well. But yeah, my LinkedIn, I think it's probably, I didn't realize that my LinkedIn is much more easier to find. It's literally LinkedIn, IN, and Isabella Naranjo. There's no numbers in it. I don't know how I manage that, but yeah. I'm looking to connect. I'm brewing new fun things, so let's chat.
Yay.
And I do want to say thank you to Sydney. Consistently an inspiration and doing things first and kind of paving way of how to be a little bit of your better self every day. So keep doing it.
Thank you, Isa. Isa, thank you so much for joining me today. And everybody who tuned in and listened, thank y'all so much for joining us at the CoolHER. And we will see you next time.